let's take a look at our top selections. Dan Illman, Mike Beer. Let's kick off the late pick 4 at Aqueduct on Wood Memorial Saturday with race number 8, the Grade 3 Excelsior Stakes for older horses. Let's take a peek at this field. We're going 1 1/8. What an opportunity for Mr. Buff, Mike, to get that long-awaited graded stakes win. He's been the scourge of the New York bred handicap division for a long time. He's 10 for 17 at Aqueduct. It seems every time he runs in a race with a G next to it, he underperforms, but this race is a graded race in name only, right?
Yeah, it is. They might be able to trick him here, Dan, into thinking that this isn't a graded stakes race. This is the right spot. If he's ever going to win a graded stakes race, it's right here.
He's just a cool horse, and his speed always puts him in a good position. And according to the Timeform US Pace Projector, that's where you want to be in a race with a blue bar scenario, favoring horses on or near the early lead. Backside of the Moon has a little bit of speed, but he doesn't have Mr. Buff's gas. Mr. Buff should be able to get to the front and control this.
Yeah, that's what it looks like on paper, Dan. It'd be sort of foolish for them not to put him on the front here. That's his game, is going to the front. This is his track. This is his distance. It just feels like all the stars are aligning here for him to get a graded stakes win.
Number 1, Heikal is back up from Gulfstream Park for trainer Todd Pletcher. He's done some good work at Aqueduct in the past. He won the 2019 Gotham. I just think they're grasping at straws. What distance is Heikal's best? I think the conventional wisdom going into this year was that he was a one-run closer, and now they're stretching him all the way back out to 1 1/8. He was an okay third in the Wood in 2019.
Yeah, he was. That Wood did have a very fast and contested pace, though, Dan, which is just what Heikal wanted to see that day. He did well to be third. Yeah, I mean, I guess they're going to try and stretch him out again because as much as he may look like a one-turn closing kind of horse, it just hasn't worked out. They got to try something else.
Finished last in the Grade 3 Hooper last time out behind the now retired Performer, although he was kind of wide off of a slow pace. There's Grumps Little Tots stepping up off a $50,000 claiming win. First off, the Rab Atris Reclaim. Let's watch Grumps Little Tots in a game performance, going 1 1/8 in his first start of the year. He got right up close to a moderate pace. This was a nice ride by Manny Franco, and Grumps Little Tots game under the line, the 4th horse coming back to earn an 84 buyer when third in one of those little starter stakes races.
Hey, I'll give him credit for gutting this thing out, Dan. It's a wide open race, obviously, from this point down to the wire, but he's going to stay very gamely here to hold on at the end. This is actually a pretty nice horse. He might be a little underrated. I don't know about graded stakes races for him, Dan. Even in a race like this, he's probably stepping up in class, maybe a little bit too far, but this horse is okay.
Backside of the Moon, a 9-year-old gelding. There's been a lot of money on this horse, Mike. $100,000 claim in 2019 by these connections. They lost him for 62.5, and he ended up winning the Queens County over course and distance for Rudy Rodriguez with a front-running gambit. Claimed back by these connections off his last race. Now, I have to admit, I was a little bit disappointed in his last race. He was the beaten favorite. He controlled the pace up front. Maybe he had to go a little bit too fast the middle portion of the race while pressured.
Yeah, maybe he did, Dan. Boy, he's a tough call right now because after the Queens County, where he popped that big triple-digit buyer and wired that field, that was, first of all, a great ride from Jose Lezcano. This horse caught a flyer at the break. He just went with it on a very strong rail and wired the field. So maybe that race was a little dressed up. But, man, he's still way better than his last 2 starts. And to me, he just hasn't run well in either of his last 2. If he can rebound, he can win.
Conversely, Lima Knight has popped career best buyer speed figure of 96 in his 2 starts off of the claim. Beaten by Mr. Buff last time out in the Stymie. This is a horse that I think will handle the 1 1/8. I think stretching out's going to be good for him, but he needs someone to at least push Mr. Buff a little bit.
He does. You know, we'll see what kind of trip he's able to work out in here, Dan. He is a tactical enough horse to get a good trip in this race. He's just also really, really dressed up off of his last 2 races. Rode a very strong rail 2 starts back when he won over this distance. And then last time, I know he kind of made it close with Mr. Buff, but Mr. Buff went a wicked pace in there, and this horse took advantage.
Modernist showed a little bit of potential last year as a 3-year-old briefly on the Kentucky Derby Trail. He won a division of the Risen Star Stakes from close to the pace. Let's watch his seasonal debut. Now, keep in mind, this is his first race since July off a long layoff, and he caught a sharp horse that controlled things from the start. Last Judgment. I think Modernist did some good things to get up for second in here. He should be much tighter for this assignment and 1.125 is no issue. He might be actually one of the legitimate graded horses in this field.
I agree, Dan. I think if Mr. Buff loses, he probably loses to Modernist. This is a horse who I think has a lot to prove still. I was encouraged by his return from the layoff last time, though. I thought he got a good trip overall, but he ran, and he took a step forward on figures as well. He's not a horse who's going to be compromised by pace. There's just a lot to like about him as the second choice.
And both of Tintoretto's wins came going long distances on wet turf in Germany. This is a long-distance dirt race. I'm not sure he's a dirt horse.
He doesn't look like a dirt horse.
Let's watch Mr. Buff's win in the stymie last time out. Lifetime victory, number 17, and he went right to the front. He set a legitimate pace over this sloppy track, going a one-turn mile, Mike, and you see Lima Knight on the outside. He's got a shot at Mr. Buff. Mr. Buff has worked hard in here, but Mr. Buff just keeps on rolling along. 97 buyer speed figure, and simply the horse to beat, and a horse that you don't mind rooting for.
Yeah, it would be really nice to see him get a graded stakes win here. He deserves it, if nothing else. He ran really well in here, Dan. That was a really fast pace that he set. I know Lima Knight got up for second in there, but Musical Heart, who was third, probably ran the second best race in there. He chased Mr. Buff all the way around the track and got tired at the end. This horse ran great last time. His good race, I think, might make him too tough for this field.
Hard to get past Mr. Buff as we take a look at our top picks. Maybe Backside of the Moon, a horse that's chased Mr. Buff in vain a couple of times. If he can get back to one of his good races, can threaten. It'll be interesting what kind of trip. I'm not sure I like the idea of him chasing Mr. Buff. And then if he puts Mr. Buff away somehow, now he's got to deal with Modernist. We'll see what sort of trip he gets. He's a likable old timer as well as Mr. Buff. 7532 for Mike, 3574 for me. Keep an eye out for Modernist, but it's Mr. Buff's race to lose, perhaps, in the Grade 3 Excelsior.